Quishbilly, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Quishbilly's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Good evening. It's been 22 hours and 10 minutes since the final whistle. And no, I'm not going to break into Sinead O'Connor, but I am still frothing away, and nothing compares to that decision last night by Mr. Donohue, the referee. Welcome to everybody online, and welcome to the Andy Takes That Chance podcast, sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing, where you can get 10% off all online orders if you use our code of AHTTC10 at magicrockbrewing.com. Okay, this week, sneaking out of the comments box into the box on your screen or podcast provider. Who let the Dargs out? It's Darg Barnett. And back for round 2 after an all-inclusive trip to Tenerife and now can't afford to go out for the next few Saturday nights. It's Jonny Gillespie. How are we doing, chaps?
Good, thanks, Matt.
Excellent.
Very well, thank you.
Very good. Right, Darg, this is your first appearance. We'll break you in gently, etc., onto the podcast. Just tell us a bit about yourself, how your long-time love of Huddersfield Town and some of your favourite moments. And we'll get to know you a little bit more intimately.
Well, I know I don't look it, fellas, but I've been watching Town in October. It'll be 43 years. So I've pretty much seen it all in that time, from the excellent, the Schindler penalty, through the Wadsworth era, the administration, and it seems to be a badge of honour for some people, but I was actually there at the 10-1 defeat at Manchester City in 1987.
Sorry, do we have...
That caused a bit of controversy for some reason.
I was going to say, we've got Phil on the podcast, but no, bless him. No, that's great.
I might have been playing squash or whatever it was, but no, I was actually there that day, which apparently it's it feels like something you had to be there. But so I've been going a long time, fellas. So I've seen it all, and I still coming week in, week out like a glutton for punishment. So it's what's the old joke? If I'd have committed murder, I'd have got out by now.
I say that's sort of one of the running jokes, isn't it, through Huddersfield fans? Because there's about 10,000 people reckon they were at that Man City game, don't they? It's one of those sort of funny things, and I don't know, there's about 1,000 or something in the away end or something like that. But I think there's absolutely everybody sort of lays claim that they've been there. But no, good stuff, and good to have you.
There was plenty of space there that day. That's all.
Good to have you on board. So welcome to everybody.
Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. Welcome to everybody who's watching online as well. JF says it's Prince. I don't know what that means. Oh, I think he means the song at the start, but I was going for 7 hours and 15 days. The Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You thing, if that's what you mean, Jay. If not, my apologies. But right, so we're here. We're going to talk about West Brom, which Albion 2, Huddersfield Town 2. Sticks in the throat a bit, this one, doesn't it? It's a team selection. The team selection for Carlos looked fine to me. Everything looked good. Back to the usual 4-3-3, which we've been doing lately. A bit of a cagey start, first 15 minutes. Good save from Nichols, from Alex Mowat. And then, to be honest, Town really took full control, didn't they, of the game until around the 80-minute mark, I think is probably fair to say. I thought this was an outstanding away performance up to that point. I thought Huddersfield were really good in control, used the ball really well. Russell, Hogg in midfield, created a great platform. Lewis O'Brien, as always, with, the fantastic levels of energy. And then Danny Ward, selflessly charging around up front, absolutely fantastic as well. Charged Sam Johnston down for goal 1. It's just kind of really, Dag, just rewards for how well Danny Ward works, isn't it?
I think, I have to be honest and say, when we re-signed Danny Ward, I just couldn't see it. And obviously with his injury problems last year, we just didn't get any value from him. But he's just got so much better, and he's so much fitter. And we've got a spine in the team now, haven't we? And when he's not there, witness Forest game potentially, you just realise how much you actually miss him, because I think they were saying on the comments, and Hef and McAnuff were saying, weren't they? The amount of work he does off the ball is unreal, and he gives us a focus, and gives the opposition something to think about as well. So outstanding. You can't speak highly enough of him. And if you'd asked me this time last year, I'd have been on here and I'd have said, why? Oh, he deserves every credit he gets, and he's adding goals as well. So it's all good for me.
Excellent, yeah, and he's obviously got 2 on this night. So Jonny's just having a couple of technical issues there. I think, shall we try and kick him off the podcast? Yeah, let's disconnect Jonny from the session. There we go. So it's just me and you now. So Jonny will be back in momentarily. Let's just turn to rejoin. So hello to everybody online as well. So let us know in the comments, what you guys thought of the game against West Brom, and we'll pick up the best comments as always towards the end of discussing the game itself. I think the thing to say,
Matt, is just to take the Ward point on, he gives us that focus from the front. And our shape when he's there looks so much better. Not that I think that our shape in the last probably since Christmas time hasn't looked bad at all. But he gives us a focus, and I know people are not that keen on Sinani, and he's a bit in and out. And does he influence games enough? But I totally understand why Corberan plays him, because when he's there, he also adds to that shape. And I think that Ward provides that focal point for the team as a whole. And he gives us an out, and he gives us an option, and allowing a Sinani or Holmes, I know Holmes didn't start last night, to get closer to him. Probably one of the reasons why we've gone on the run we have.
Absolutely. And, we talk about the second goal as well, which came... it's a really well-worked goal, isn't it, the second one? And it shows what you've been talking about there, the patterns that Town have played since Christmas, really. So there have been some fantastic patterns. Johnny's back. Hello, Jonny. So Town have played some fantastic patterns since Christmas, and there's no better sort of visible explanation to that as you look at that second goal. Okay, we'll cross the Johnny Hogg on Carroll Bridge when we come to that. But Town win the ball through the press, which is fantastic. Pearson plays a really sharp ball into John Russell, and what John Russell does with the ball is fantastic. And you see Danny Ward drop off, like you mentioned, Darg. Danny Ward, he drops off from your 9 position into sort of a more 10 area, and he links it brilliantly with John Russell. And it's that sort of movement, and the shape that they create there, where Russell plays it in and Ward plays the reverse one-time first touch pass, and Russell knows straight away. And then there's a huge space the other side for O'Brien. It's a really brilliantly worked piece of football, is that. And Lewis O'Brien's shot, and Sam Johnston's not going to go and be happy with himself, is he? Sort of at the end of last night, he drops it, and Danny Ward does what all good strikers do, as they say, and he's Danny on the spot there, isn't he? And it's 2-0. And Jonny, that was complete just rewards for what Huddersfield Town deserved, because to that point, they'd taken control of the game, and for my money, they were outstanding at that point.
They were, and I think there was a little moment of 10-15 minutes. I don't know if you touched on this, Ross. I was my senses like the referee did last night, but there's a little 15 minute window after the first goal where they probably could have capitalised, didn't quite. The second goal, they're worth it. Like you say, the move, that's not something that's just happened. That you can tell that kind of move into Danny Ward back, and then the run off the back of it, and then to come back round is something that's been worked on the training ground. A bit tongue-in-cheek, I say it's good that Danny Ward's followed up. I said one thing that Lewis O'Brien probably needs to work on in his game, which is excellent, is his shooting. So Danny Ward, we thought he's probably worth following this up. He's probably going to go right at the keeper. It did. Sam Johnson, like I say, he won't be happy with that. Not Lee Nicholas standard at all, but he's got two very good goals there. Someone might look at them and say, "Oh, they're easy." Do you know what I mean? He's not done it, but they're down to hard work. They're down to being in the right place. They're down to knowing and sniffing out the danger there. And the goals, which I think as a coach, even though they're not beautiful top corner goals, they're probably what you'd like to see more. Because they're down to hard work. They're down to effort. They're down to initiative. This squad's got in barrels at the moment.
100%, mate. 100%.
Do you two both think? I was going to say, do you not think one of the biggest differences as we've got into 2022 has been the patience of the team, and they don't try and push a game. They believe in what they're doing, and that leads to the hard work and the shape. And it almost it's like a game of chess. They plot their way around the field, and they're happy to keep the ball. And if they lose the ball, they know exactly where they've got to be, and then they wait for the opportunity. And that, I think that first goal, I know it was a mistake, and it was quite amusing and all that, but that was an example of waiting for the chance to actually to come to them. And I know it was half chance. It was a bit of a fluke goal in many respects. But if you're not doing those things, and you're not believing in those things and having that structure, those things don't happen for you. And I think the second goal was just good football.
But you're absolutely right. It was clever, and I mean, Hef touched on it on Sky. And if anyone has not seen it, he kind of explains that O'Brien's pressing down the left, Sinani's ready to go on the right, Ward's driving at the keeper. It's bad from Sam Johnson. He should just get rid. Keepers nowadays don't want to do that, and he's kind of looked right, he's looked left, he's panicked, he's then tried to find the man in the middle. Whilst he's trying to find that option, Ward's closing down, and we've got the reward from it. But it's not just the keeper's had a mare. It's hard work on Town's offence, which has caused an issue for the West Brom defence and Sam Johnston. Yet just get rid. But it's more than that. There's extra layers to it, and that's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? It's that hard work and that pressing and the structure, which comes from training, it comes from repetition, it's come from everyone knowing their roles and everyone executing those roles that create a chance like that. So it's more than just a howler from the keeper, even though it is a howler from the keeper.
I'd take that on a bit more as well.
Thing, though, is...
Sorry, Darg. I say I'd take your point on a bit more as well. Sorry, we're getting cross-line. And I think one thing that we can sort of point out as well is if you cast your minds back before Christmas, Huddersfield Town struggled to keep the ball full stop, didn't they? It was pretty much back to front very quickly, or we would lose the ball. And I think what's really something that you mentioned there was Huddersfield Town kept the ball patiently really well last night, and they really worked and frustrated West Brom. And they had West Brom on strings, as they say, didn't they, at one point? And you're looking at John Russell in midfield, Jonathan Hogg, that double pivot, that platform there really gave us a good template, to move around. Everybody else sort of moved around that. Ollie Turton's come in, and okay, Turton, Pearson, Lees aren't exactly cultured players on the ball, but they know when to play it, where to play it, and then if it's not on, they just go long. And Huddersfield are really well structured at the minute. And the addition of Russell and Carol Eiting, even though Carol Eiting can't quite get in for Russell at the moment, it's just given us another edge whereby we no longer have to sit deep. And you cast your mind back again, like I say, and there were games where we were losing the ball cheaply, and then we would have to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And you remember Forest away, where we absolutely skanked to 1-0, didn't we? But we were pretty much all stood on the goal line, weren't we? Because we just kept losing the ball. But last night and the week and in the games preceding that, Huddersfield are keeping the ball much better now, and they're frustrating, and they're pulling people out of position by just keeping them moving and rotating. And yeah, it's a really good point that Huddersfield Town on the ball have improved massively since I would say since Boxing Day, really. But go on, Darg.
Well, I was just to make the point that from what John was saying, you say that Johnson should have put it up the pitch, but if you look at the halfway line, you've got Lees, Pearson, Turton all covering the West Brom players up the pitch. I don't know who was marking who, but he didn't have much of an option. And I think one of the reasons that he didn't clear it straight away, he was looking for an option, and there wasn't one there. And Ward realised that he had a potential chance to charge him down, did what he's been doing, and got the goal for his troubles. But going back to what you say there, Matt, I think it's quite ironic, and I like to be honest. I actually rang Radio Leeds, which I don't often do. I'm not like Cozy, who's on there all the time.
He loves it, absolutely loves it. Yeah.
I think they love him being on. I think they ring him.
We all love him. We all love Cozy.
Absolutely. But I rang on the way back from Barnsley because I was so frustrated because I thought on the day Barnsley were just so poor. And in that game, and I said to Matt Glennon, they've got to be a bit braver. They've got to get the pitch. They were getting themselves in trouble. although they weren't in trouble, but they weren't giving themselves a chance to go and win the game because they were so deep and so slow. And the addition of Russell for me has been that magic ingredient that gives us that extra bit of control in midfield. It allows Hogg to do what he used to do with Moy, which is essentially win the ball, give it simple. And the other thing that Russell does is he moves the ball quickly. He keeps it and he moves it quickly and he moves it forward. And I just feel like we're playing 15 yards further up the pitch because we have that confidence. And like I said before, that patience to actually keep the ball and actually wait for the opportunity and keep moving teams around side to side, front to back. And I think I also sense that the Peterborough game was a good example, that the fans are recognising what's happening. So you're not getting "give it forward" and all that typical rhetoric. People are seeing what they're trying to do, and they can see that they're in control of games. And as long as the longer that continues, the more chance we've got.
100%, and it's that I'm someone who craves control. In terms of the way David Wagner's teams played, I know we shouldn't compare the two, but we always look to control the game, didn't we, and take control of the game. So when we sit deep and play on the counter, I get really nervous and twitchy, of that. I should have more faith, because we've got an outstanding clean sheet record. But I do get quite twitchy, and I do crave Huddersfield Town taking control of the football. Like they say, the best form of defence is like Barcelona used to do. They used to tire teams out just by passing it around them. But I think the improvements definitely since Christmas, and like you say, Russell and Eiting, and Eiting's moved Russell on as well, and John Russell was supposed to be a number 10 as well. Let's not forget that Town brought him in because they thought he'd be a 10 or wide player, and he's played 6, 8, 10. He's done really well, and I think that adaptability, and you look at Lewis O'Brien, he's the same. The adaptability of all of them to rotate and move around has really helped. A very, very different kind of side rather than your structured 4-2-3-1, which we had before. You've now got a team that quite happily flicks from 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2, 3-5-2 seamlessly at times. And it's really good. And I love little nerdy stuff like that and watching it appear on the pitch because I sit quite high up and I can see them moving around, and I rather get way too excited for a man of my age from over tactics and stuff. But it's brilliant, and I think we've talked about a lot of good stuff there, but I think we need to address the man in green, don't we? The little green man. Was he in green or was he yellow? I can't remember. I wish I can't remember. But Mr. Donohue had a bit of a stinker, really. There's three. I flagged 3-4 decisions. I flagged one because he got it right, so I feel like I have to kind of match it up a little bit. But there's a couple of things here. So the first one was Taylor Gardner-Hickman went in on Sinani, studs high, very, very high. That, with VAR, that's in the Premier League, that's probably a red card. I don't like to see them being given as red cards, to be honest. But, there's that one there where he could potentially have moved West Brom down to 10 men. There's a possible foul in Huddersfield's second goal, Hogg, on Carroll. Do you know what? I watch it, and Carroll is pulling Jonathan Hogg, when Hogg goes between the legs, and some would say, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But it probably is a foul by Hoggy, to be fair. His studs going to the car for Carroll. And then the penalty decision, which is just an incredibly bad decision. His positioning didn't help. I do feel for him slightly that he's behind Mowat, so he can't fully see the front face contact, but he's guessed. He's not checked with his linesman. He's guessed. Sorba Thomas, I cannot fathom why anyone would think that was a penalty. Anybody. Sorba Thomas, it's not dangerous because it's not even waist high. Alex Mowat's 5'7" and ducking and launching himself into it head first. Alex Mowat is not tall enough for it to be dangerous play. He's about 4 foot off the ground at that point. Well, probably a bit bigger. I'm exaggerating. But, he's dived in. There's no contact. He's looked for it. He's cheated. Well, all footballers cheat, don't they? But, he's looked for it. It's a very disappointing decision because there's so much as sort of hinged. That's a fulcrum of a decision, that, because it's allowed West Brom to get back into a game that they didn't deserve to get back into. Fair play to them in a way that they did. They came back at us really well after that, and we did lose our heads. But it's also really changed the landscape of the results for the weekend, because Huddersfield obviously playing on Friday night. Huddersfield winning that game puts extra pressure on Bournemouth. It almost lets Bournemouth off the hook a little bit, with this decision. I'm not trying to blame Matt Donohue for the entire weekend's results, even though it sounds like I'm saying that every result this weekend that didn't go our way is his fault. But it just changes the landscape, and that's what's frustrating, really. I'm not going to I don't blame him 100% for giving it, because from his angle, it could have potentially been a penalty. And I think what's in his head maybe is that Callum Robinson went down under a challenge from Matty Pearson about 10 minutes before that he didn't give. And Pearson puts his hands on him, but there's no push. So it's not a penalty. He's got that decision right. But I think that potentially is in his head and thought, do you know what? I've already turned down one. Maybe I've got to give this one. And I'm very disappointed in the referee. He's not on my. I've got a referee shit list, by the way, and he's never been on it before. But he might be on it with a couple more of those. But
what is he on it? Is he on it now?
Not yet, but potentially his name's been marked along with Jeremy Simpson. But we'll see, and Gavin Ward. But tell me what you guys thought of those decisions, because I was fuming, absolutely effing fuming. I'm not going to swear this week. If it was last night, I'd have been swearing all over the place. But I was raging. I was ready to turn tables and couches over in the living room, and my little boy was scared because his dad had turned into the Incredible Hulk. But I was absolutely raging at that. Stop me from talking, Jonny.
Yeah, to go back to the first one, regarding Hickman, it's one of them where Sinari's lucky that his leg's not planted. It's kind of become a bit of a cliche saying that, but if his leg's planted there, I fear for his leg bones. In all honesty, it's a really nasty injury, and from that you can say, is it dangerous play? Probably, yeah. I think just Sinani probably dictates the referee's decision. It shouldn't do. For me, if the red's given, I think he's not got much of a case to argue. In reality, the Hogan Carroll. I must say, when they showed it on the replay, there is a little bit of a pull. I'd say it's a foul. I think if you flip it round, if it's the other way around, I think I'd be fuming that the ref's not pulled that back and it's gone for a goal. Yeah. So I think, that is a foul. But I mean, none of that's anything compared to the penalty. I mean, when I first watched it, I didn't instinctively think penalty. I didn't kind of wince. I got ooh, and start to get nervous. Look at the ref. I was going to think of that. We're going to break from that, or the ball goes back into the box. Who's going to clear it? And the ref blows, and instantly I think what's he blown for? So when you see something first time, it's faster, you tend to get a feel whether he's going to give it as a penalty or not. When they show the replay, you kind of hear the pundit go, "Oh," almost like he almost comes out of his character. He almost makes it, "Oh, I'm not like sure about that." But again, slowed down. We know it's not a penalty. He gets the ball. He retracts his leg. There's no way near Mowat. Like you said, the height of Mowat, I think somewhere on Twitter, someone's drawn a line and waist to boot. It's below that. All the things point to the fact it's not a foul. From the ref's angle, we don't know why he's seen it. He's seen it as a high foot, dangerous. Do you think there's been contact there? Does he not think Sorba's got the ball? And this goes back to something which I put on a comment a few weeks ago in a pod, is I don't expect the referees to come out and do an interview after a game, because I don't think that's right. That's not what their job is. I don't expect them to do any form of video interview, but I think there should be a report, which there is. There always is a report on a game published on their governing body websites. It's not on the Daily Mail. It's not on Sky. Someone should go and find it and read it, and just to know, not to argue, not for them to have to evidence why, like, explain themselves, just to know what the decision was made for. Why was it made? Was it made because he thinks there was contact on the head? Was it made because he thought it was a high boot and it's dangerous play? Or was he? Did he not realise Sorba had made contact with the ball? Just so we know, there's nothing to come from that. But just so we know, and equally from the West Brom, the Carroll foul, did he not see that? Did he think it was, like Matt said, bit of 50-50, half of one? Do you know what I mean? Bit of the other. I think it'd be I think it's time for, in this day and age, with all kind of the media that goes around football, just to understand why the refs made a decision and what decision they have made, because it's just blind. We don't know. We're sat here talking about, did he think this? Did he think that? We're absolutely no idea, and we never will know, because there's nothing we can find out for what the refs think or why they make a decision. I think it would be useful to have that, not to hit them with, not to stick to hit them with, but just to know why these decisions get made or what they see. They're human. They're going to make mistakes. But I'd like to know what his opinion was, just so we know why. That's my opinion. I think it's time that some form of forum in the right way that we get to get these answers to these questions. It's not going to change the answer. It's not going to change the game. It's not going to give us revert the penalty decision, but at least we'd know.
They kind of do that in rugby league a little bit, with the penalties. They say why people have been cited, don't they? And the board and stuff. It's not quite as transparent as what you're describing, but you kind of get a good idea. But yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. Darg, you thought, in WhatsApp, you thought Alex Mowat was applying for a career at WWE, didn't you, with some of the play acting that was going on?
Try and find a bit of balance for the referee. I think if you look at his position, because they were saying on the television afterwards, because I watched the game after the event because I was out last night, so I sat up and watched it, and I wasn't too sure what I was feeling. I thought, surely we haven't lost 3-2. Anyway, that's by the by. But what I thought was, they said he had a good view of it. I'm not so sure he did have a good view of it, because Mowat's gone across his line of vision. So it's almost, he's seen Sorba Thomas's leg go up, but he doesn't know what's happened because Mowat's gone across him. What I thought Mowat may have done, and you don't pick this up on the television very often, and very rarely, and certainly not at the ground, he may have cried out, and screamed out, and he thought, he's caught him in the head, and given a decision based on what he's heard as much as what he's seen. If you look at it real time, you think, is that a high foot? And then when you see it slowed down, neither A got the ball, and by the time that Mowat's actually going past the line of Sorba Thomas's foot, it's well below waist height. His foot's going down. So, quite honestly, it was. Can you give him a let? Because in the time that this happens in the game, possibly. Did I think he had a brilliant game? I've seen worse than him, if I'm being entirely honest.
Yeah.
I thought that the earlier challenge had shades of Koroma at Stoke, perhaps, and perhaps Koroma's was slightly worse. But you've seen them given in the Premier League, he'd have been in trouble. I think the issue with the Cowell thing, as I thought he had a pull on Hogg first, but the referee needs to blow for that first before the next incident happening. The next second or two, Hogg has definitely put his foot down his calf, hasn't he? And if he sees that, it's a foul, isn't it? At the end of the day, you can't argue. But I thought in the first instance he was having a pull at Hoggy. The best we should have got out of that was a free kick on the pull on Hoggy. It's one of those you sometimes get, you don't get. I don't think he was terrible as a referee, but if we get to May and we've missed out on something by 2 points, you can go and get your voodoo doll, Matt, and do it.
It's a list, yeah. Like Chris Jericho. For anyone that watches wrestling, it's like Chris Jericho, isn't it? I don't know if anybody's as sad as me, but there we go. Not that I do watch wrestling. I'm not Stephen Chicken.
No, I don't.
It's you got me off. You mentioned WWE, didn't you? You set me off.
Sorry, well, it was just the dramatic dive, and he's been poleaxed. I thought, hang on, he hasn't been touched.
I think going back to
actually, you'd have thought.
Just going back to what you were saying about the referee's position, I agree that his position's not great, and that he's having to invent the scenario almost in his head, isn't he, of what's actually happened. He's like trying to sort of work it out. And I think what's frustrating for me is he gave that really quickly, the decision really quickly. He didn't give himself a couple of seconds just to sort of think about it. So he kind of made his bed very early, didn't he? And he must have been positive that there was something going on there. And I think that's the only thing really where I've kind of gone, well, you could have waited and sort of thought about that for a moment, and maybe he would change his mind.
I agree. I agree. That's why I wonder whether Mowat screamed out, shouted out, or because he went down as if he'd been hit and he's had his eye poked out or whatever, and I wonder whether he's heard that. He's always caught him with his foot, and then he hasn't even given it any thinking time, like you say. Going to Jonny's point about referees in general, isn't it true that the managers and the club get a report so that they know what the referee is thinking? And to me, it's all a bit academic after the event anyway, isn't it? I mean, really, what they should be doing is should be grading these referees more accurately. And actually, if they're having stinking games, downgrading them or taking them off the panel completely. But that never seems to happen.
We get the shit Premier League ones, don't we?
So it's all, yeah. Well, but it never seems to happen, doesn't it? What I would say is, bar a couple of exceptions this year, I don't think the refereeing has been that bad. But perhaps I'm being a bit overly optimistic.
Do you know what? There's a theory I've got on some of the refereeing stuff, and there's a lot of people sort of saying, Huddersfield have had the rub of the green with referees a lot this year. And yeah, a pretty laughable offside decision which went our way there. Moving slightly, sort of, I can see the stream sort of going a bit funny. But just, guys, moving on, you look at this season in general with some of the refereeing decisions, and I think Huddersfield have had sort of more worse decisions against them than people realise. And I think over the last sort of 10 years, I think we've become accustomed really to being shithoused by referees. I know there's an element of you make your own luck, don't you? And maybe we don't attack enough, we're not good enough to get a lot of decisions. But I look at a lot of stuff this season, the 2 decisions against Fulham where Ryan Schofield's pretty much in the north stand where he's clearing that, ball out and it hits Mitrovic and goes in. How the linesman didn't give that. He gave Danny Ward offside in the same game when he never was. The Campbell one, which is, maybe it is right decision against Everton. You've got Levi Colwill getting pushed in the back when Peterborough equalised. There's a lot of decisions that haven't gone our way as well. There's a lot of things that haven't gone. And Huddersfield, I think, are a real sort of magnet for ropey refereeing decisions this season. And I think it is probably 50-50. We've got some, the Stoke game was ridiculous, the penalty decision in Koroma. I don't think the Koroma challenge is as bad as what the Stoke fans are trying to make out, but it probably is a red card. But, I think Huddersfield just seem a magnet for really crap refereeing this season. And in terms of big decisions, but I think during the game, like you mentioned, Darg, it's sort of, the general running of the game's been pretty good this year. It's just those sort of big decisions when something happens that they seem to be a little bit random, don't they? But I think we've had enough of Matt Donohue. I don't really want to blame the entire weekend on him. It's a decision. I think what is very apparent, and Michael Heffley was in the Sky studio and he was outstanding. I thought he was so pissed off after the game. He could barely speak. And, I genuinely thought he was going to rip his shirt off and start throwing tables around. And Michelle Owen asked him about the penalty and stuff. He was accused Alex Mowat of play acting and stuff. I want to see more of that, though. On Sky, it's really boring having the same pundits, who don't know the clubs, sort of. Joby McAnuff's not bad, and Liam Rosini was really good before. But, having people on like Hef, I like having club figures on, rather than just sort of general bland ones. But, he was absolutely... He was...
I needed Hef.
Yeah. And he was fuming.
It helped. I needed him then. I needed him to talk to me and tell me that it's going to be okay. And he understood. And he did.
Yeah. Do you know what he made a really good point through the anger in his voice. His mustache was shaking, with anger. But, through that, he actually made a really good point in that it's still only 2-1 and Huddersfield Town as a team lost their heads for 5 minutes and it's cost us the game. The referee hasn't cost us the game, let's be honest. Because 2-1, you can see that out. We've lost our heads. We've dropped deep. Jonathan Hogg had a great game. I thought Hoggy was really good throughout the game, but he's made a pass there that his experience should not be making. I think that's fair to say. He's given the ball away. It's not all Jonathan Hogg's fault. The ball goes down the right hand side. Nobody blocks the cross. And then Andy Carroll gets a run, and he doesn't even aim the header. It just hits him. I don't know if he knows the contours of his head perfectly. But it just kind of hits him and glances perfectly into the corner. And I looked at that and I thought, you lucky bastard. When he did, because it just sort of glanced off him, didn't it?
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's the first thing I said. I said, that has hit his face.
Yeah.
Listen, England, you can tell the quality of an ex-England player. It's like, it hit his face.
Yeah.
It's that. I mean, it's great. It looked brilliant, but it's hit his face. He's not done anything.
He didn't guide it or anything. Yeah, he didn't guide it. No. It just sort of like glanced. It's like I said, he either knows every sort of shape and angle on his head wonderfully well to know that that's going to go in the corner, or it's just hit him. But Town were brilliant for 80 minutes in that game. I thought first 15 minutes actually West Brom went at us and we repelled them. But I thought Town didn't get what they deserved. I was gutted really because we deserved to win the game 2-0. And it was a really good away performance. We controlled the game. It's like I say, I'm all about control. And we controlled the game. And then just to lose it with 5 minutes of madness, which is partly our undoing as well, just left a bit of a bad taste. And Carlin Grant almost won it as well. I don't know if he was offside or wasn't offside. I don't know what the rule is with offside anymore. In Premier League with VAR, it's not offside because of the daylight thing. But I don't know if that applies to the Championship. I've got no idea. But he hit the bar, so it doesn't matter. And then Tino came on. He looked a little bit sharper, did Tino, to be fair. He's looked very unmatched. He's not match fit, let's be honest, but he came on, looked quite sharp, and and Andy Carroll again, that forehead of Andy Carroll, almost swore, that forehead of Andy Carroll just knocking it off the line as Tino sort of hit it into the ground, didn't he? Sort of whacked it into the ground. It was a good effort, and disappointing 2-2 draw. And I think, to be honest, Jonny, we have to blame ourselves as much as the referee, don't we, really?
Yeah, I think, just going back to something we touched on before, there's a couple of points. So, yeah, after the first goal, West Brom were like a heavyweight boxing match. You're taking a big hit. The legs were wobbling, and we didn't quite. There was a couple of opportunities where we didn't quite get the ball down with Sorba, or the pass wasn't quite right, and there was a window opportunity there where we could have capitalised. So I said that's potential. If we could be really critical, that's a potential error where we didn't quite capitalise there. And then the first goal goes in. Everyone's annoyed. You like Hef said, you've got to think we're still 2-1 up away with next to 8 minutes left to go. Keep cool, keep calm, do what we've done the entire game, do what we've done, like you say, since December. Structure, patience, find the passes, get the patterns. And we didn't do that. And like you say, it's not Hoggy's fault. The pass is shocking. He then kind of stops and almost looks at himself and has a bit of a go at himself, and then realises, right, switch on. It's gone. We don't know. We don't know whether it's gone or not. But having something happen like that might just help. It's not happened yet. We almost lost the unbeaten run. We haven't. We kept it at 2-2. By the thickness of a crossbar, it could have been 3-2. Carlos will use that. The players might use that, and I just go back to kind of thinking back to Peterborough and Old Trafford. That was a very quick 1-2-3. Something happening like this in the season, so close to potential playoffs. It might help. It might just help them experience that, keep their heads, learn from it. There's a lot of experienced players in there. There's a lot of young players as well, and having that happen to them and feeling that hurt. Which you look at Sorba Thomas on the bench when the whistle goes, just head between his legs. They might take something from it. It might be something that makes a bit of difference towards the end of the season and in the playoffs. So I think that's one thing we can try and take out of it. We kept it at 2-2. We almost made it 3-2 as well. It's championship in and out there, isn't it? But yeah, we might take a bit heart from it. We might take a bit of a lesson from it. I'm sure Carlos will try and use it in that way. And we did keep the unbeaten run. That's a very thin silver lining.
Great point. Darg,
just what John said there. I think that's right. The old adage in football, it's a massive cliche, but it's true. Goals change games, and that penalty changed the game. And Hef's right. Our mentality should have been to try and close that game down, and instead our instinct, and it's been a problem a couple of times this season, hasn't it, is to sit a bit deeper. I think the thing that disappointed me more, anybody can make a bad pass. Hoggy made a bad pass. He knew he'd made a bad pass. But I think Pearson had two at the back post, and he didn't know which one to go to. And it was a good ball. And like you were right, I mean, it just hit Andy Carroll. Mind you, Andy Carroll, £30 million footballer, so you have to give him credit. But it was I thought it was just a catalogue of errors. And then Carling Grant nearly scores at the end, whether it was offside. I didn't even contemplate that, to be honest. And then, but the good thing for me, there were two good things. We then went up, and Tino nearly scored. And I agree, he looked sharper, and he certainly isn't match fit yet. But that was a bit of quality to shot from that angle in that circumstance and put the ball in that space. I thought actually this lad has got, I didn't think he didn't have something before. We hadn't seen it yet, but that was the sign of what he's got. But the thing that really I took great heart from was listening to Danny Ward's post-match interview, and it was very much a case of we're very annoyed, but we're moving on to the next game. And Carlos is about what all good sports psychologists will tell you: live in the moment. You can't. You draw on. I think they draw on what they've done in the past, but that's now gone. We now focus on the next challenge. And in the context of where we are in the season, I don't think that they're thinking second or the playoffs. They're thinking about the next game. And the longer they can keep doing that, and they don't have that pressure on them to try and, we're playing Bournemouth next Saturday. It's a big opportunity. And it is, but it's a game that's at home that they're going to try and win. And I think that the mentality across the football club, in the footballing side, is very much like that. And I think that's really good. And if they can keep that going for the remaining 9 games and whatever comes after that, I think that gives us a great chance, because I don't think a lot of teams have got the same mentality as us. There may be teams with better players, although that's debatable. We could discuss that all night. But I'm not sure that teams have got our mentality. And I think this is there's 2 changes I think I can see from last season. One is our shape and our ability to defend, which is all credit to Carlos, because if it's only a year ago when we had those shambolic performances against Blackburn and Norwich, and he's turned it around magnificently, and the players have bought into everything, but it's the mentality. And, I worried after Forest, even though we'd changed the team greatly, how would that impact our mentality? And there was no sign of that for me yesterday. And we had a mad 5 minutes where we didn't concentrate, and we ended up losing 2 points. But that wasn't the end of the world. And you could tell from what Danny Ward said, he didn't think it was the end of the world either. So, I think that's the real positive that comes out of it.
Yeah. There's a point I think I'd like to draw on as well. We sort of probably scrutinise Carlos's substitutions and in-game management probably more on here than everywhere else does. You know what I mean? And I do look at the changes he made with Daniel Sinani. I remember thinking Daniel Sinani needs to come off at this point. His performance has dipped a bit. I thought he was okay on the day, but his performance had dipped. And for me, Dwayne Holmes was the natural substitute for him. I think I know Dwayne does sometimes give the ball away, but I think when it really counts, when we need to play keep ball rather than going forward and looking for angles, I think Dwayne actually keeps the ball quite well in that situation. He's quite becoming experienced. And for me, that was the substitute to make. I'm not making out I'm better than Carlos Coburn at all, because that'd be complete nonsense. But he brought on Levi Colwill and went sort of to a back 3. And for me, that... Not that it was a terrible decision. The penalty for me completely changed the game, not the substitutions. But I just thought when they brought Levi Colwill on, that invited Huddersfield to drop those 15 yards we mentioned earlier, Darg. And I thought we did drop off those 10, 15. And when you've got Andy Carroll on the pitch, you look at the penalty decision. The first ball there was a diagonal to Andy Carroll, who headed it down. The second goal, Andy Carroll, 7 yards out. Dropping that 10 yards really sort of helped West Brom to come back into the game and allowed Andy Carroll to be more useful around the box. And that's where you don't want Andy Carroll. You want Andy Carroll where Jonathan Hogg's taking the ball off him, 10 yards higher. And I just thought, I don't think if the penalty doesn't go against us, I still think we win that game 2-0. So it's not a major point. I just thought that maybe didn't help with the terms of in terms of the way that the game was balanced, I think. But it's not a major complaint at Carlos, but I just thought maybe that wasn't the perfect solution, Darg, on this occasion.
No, I think you're right, and I think, but now you make the point. You think you're bringing on Levi Colwill, you know what he offers, the quality he's got. But in the context of the game at that point, what were West Brom doing that needed Levi Colwill on the pitch that we couldn't have swapped Sinari for an Icing, for example, or bring Holmes on? And I suppose to be fair to Carlos, I've seen him make a couple of situations. Which was the game? Was it the Cardiff game when he put Lewis O'Brien back to left side of defence?
Yeah, and everyone's going, "What the hell are you doing?" And then
he realised it wasn't working and changed it again.
Oh, there was.
I wonder if he had his time over.
Yeah.
Whether he'd do something different.
Yeah,
he just seemed to learn from it. But I agree with what you're saying. In the context of that game last night, I'm not sure what Colwill was needed for at that precise moment. And I agree with you. Having a 3 did invite them 10 yards up the pitch further, and that's never a good thing if somebody's chasing the game.
No.
So I agree also. If they don't get the penalty, they don't get the goal, we win 2-0, happy days. It is what it is, isn't it? I mean, we've now, we've got to take the positives from another draw. We've not been beaten in the league since Middlesbrough beat us. That's right, isn't it?
Yep.
So let's go to Millwall with a bit of confidence. That's the way I'd look at it.
100%. Johnny's just nodded, so I don't think he's got much to say maybe on that one. He's happy with that. So there's just a couple of things. That essentially is the game. Town excellent, really, for a lot of it. Even through the disappointment of not winning that game, there are things to be heartened by, and I was whinging about it this morning. I woke up feeling really pissed off this morning. It's awful anyway. You wake up and you're like, why do I feel pissed off? Oh, yeah. And then you just remind yourself. And I was chatting, I'm in a WhatsApp thing with Dave Hartrick and Stephen Chicken, and they were chatting away, and I was just like, I'm still pissed off. And then Dave sent me his 5 conclusions, and his 5 conclusions were actually really, really good. And there were a lot of stuff in there which does warm the heart a little bit. So sometimes it's good to get. Dave reckons he's a neutral, but he's lived up here for years. He loves Huddersfield Town just as much as Brighton, in my opinion. But it's good to read that. So there's a couple of things as well which warmed my heart, I guess. Trying to make a link there was Danny Ward and Sorba Thomas. I thought they were really outstanding in this game. Danny Ward, I can't really stress. We mentioned him earlier, didn't we? And I've got him at the end again here. Just the impact he makes, and I think Huddersfield Town need another Danny Ward in the summer to rotate with him maybe a bit more. But Danny Ward has exceeded everybody's expectations by a country mile, and I've seen people making the best of teams comparing 2016-17 to this one, and literally everybody has Danny Ward up front over Nahki Wells, and I think that is a real sort of feather in the cap for Danny Ward as well, that everybody is now, even Dale Marsden on Twitter is acknowledging that Danny Ward has been outstanding, and Dale can take that, he's my mate. And him and Sorba switched from being right wing back, and one thing a tactical thing I didn't really like Carlos, what he was doing early in the season was he was, out of possession. We were a 5, and it was Sorba wrapping round to that right back slot, even when you've got Ollie Turton there, which was a little bit unnecessary in some ways, because Sorba's so great in the transition in the middle third, coming from defence to attack, and he links it so well, and he's so dangerous, and he must have nutmegged about 4 different players during the game. And, how much he cares when, I know he was gutted, wasn't he, against Nottingham Forest, because, he didn't get to play against Liverpool, and he was really upset coming off the pitch, but he was upset again that we'd thrown it away. But he's someone I love watching, is Sorba Thomas. So is Danny Ward. If we could get the stats on the amount of pitch that Danny Ward covers, through chasing and harrying, it's outstanding. And Jordan Rhodes gives a good contrast, when you need to bring him on to partner him or bring him on for certain things. But, I do think that at some point, Danny Ward may need someone else in a similar mould, or we will need someone in a similar mould to Danny Ward just to help with the workload. But those two in particular, and Lewis O'Brien as well, it's just, like I keep saying, Lewis O'Brien scores 7 out of 10 every week, and everyone just takes it as a 6. He's just phenomenal. And he's rapidly becoming one of the best midfielders in the Championship. There's West Ham circling as well. And all of a sudden, the rumours are about a 15 million release clause, and you're thinking, bloody hell, maybe that's not enough now, because his stock is constantly going up. And for me, he's heading towards... Jonny, we were talking about Brady's hot takes on the warm-up, weren't we, about somebody who said Aaron Moy's passing and shooting was... or Lewis O'Brien's passing and shooting was better than Aaron Moy, and something I said there probably wasn't repeatable, because I'm a massive Aaron Moy fan. But in terms of value, Lewis O'Brien is just a phenomenal footballer, isn't he? And like Brady, I think, made the point that he fits in so many key positions as well, whereas your Moy was your number 8 in that team, and everything sort of revolved around him, whereas Lewis O'Brien revolves around the team. Very different players, and I can't speak highly enough of those 3 at the minute. Danny Ward's work rate, Sorba Thomas's trickery, I hate saying passion, because I feel like someone who rings TalkSport up and just cries about passion when England are playing. But what he brings, his vigour. We'll go vigour instead of passion. What he brings to that, to the pitch, it's just so absorbing to watch it. Absorber Thomas, there you go. So it's so absorbing to watch, these players, and I'm really enjoying it. And even though I absolutely gutted, me and you, Jonny, were crestfallen, weren't we, with the result last night? But I love watching these guys. Love these 3 players, more than just these 3 players. The Ward's work rate, Sorba's trickery, Lewis O'Brien's energy. It's just, I don't want these guys to leave or break up. It's like take that all over again,
That's
isn't
the worry, isn't it?
But yeah,
that's the worry. I think I lost count of the amount of times Sky Sport. I think it was almost like Lewis O'Brien linked to West Ham was his name on the back of his shirt last night. The amount of times they alluded to it or mentioned it, but. Yeah, to kind of go into those 3, I think one of the key things Lewis O'Brien does as well. He jinxed past a West Brom player a high quality West Brom player with ease. I think it must have happened about between 8 and 10 times in the game. The yards he carried the ball, if you look at like American football thing, his yard stats would have been definitely the highest in that game. That's something that it's not just unique to Huddersfield. It's unique to kind of more modern day football, really. You don't get the players to ball, carry it and dribble it the yards that Lewis O'Brien can do. Not necessarily down to ability, just to the way football's more played nowadays. But I think that's fantastic to see, and that's something which is really unique to his game, on top of things that you've already mentioned. But one thing I want to say about Danny Ward is, I mean, I'll stand to be corrected here, but he's trying the same things now that he always has tried since he came back to town. It just didn't work at the beginning. The ball came into him, and everyone said, "Oh, his touch is awful." Oh, like the amount of time he said, Danny Ward, ball fired into him, and it went to like 20 yards the wrong direction. And that's real testament to him and his coaches around him, that he's really persevered with this part of his game. I didn't watch him at Cardiff, so I don't really know how he played at Cardiff, but I highly doubt it's how he plays now. So it's either something that's new to him, a new striker role. He always called himself a striker, but he's more than a striker in this system that Corberan plays. And he's had to really adapt and change and learn new skills in his game that now, and the game from last night shows this really well. That time the ball came into him, and he was one touch and a way out to the left or to the right, or he was two touches out to the way or back to someone, and he was turning. When he tried to do that when he first came in, and to a certain extent the start of this season, but more kind of when he played towards the end of last season, he was nowhere near, for want of a better phrase, good enough in that part of his game. And in quite a short period of time, he's become exceptional at it. And you've got to give him massive credit for that, because he's not young. He's not kind of learning his trade. He's either having to adapt or persevere, or not kind of get moody or stroppy and think, I'm not that type of striker, I can't play like that. That's not how I want to play, and throw his toys at the pram. He's taken on the mantle. He's taken on the role. He's adapted. He's changed. He's learnt new skills. I don't know. I don't know what skills he's got or had, but I think that's the main thing that I really want to give credit to Danny Ward, is that how he's come on. You could even put him kind of most improved player in the way he's been able to change his game, and the quality that he now shows, and how integral he is to the way we attack, the outlet that he is, and then to come round, circle back around and be the goal scorer at the end of moves. It's something that I've never seen him do before. Certainly for Town first time, and then when he's come back to Town for Rotherham or Cardiff, and then Sorba Thomas. Yeah, he's just that bit of excitement. He'll try something, he'll do something. He's got the skill. It doesn't always work. More times often than it does, but he's just that bit of a maverick. And like you say, you don't want to kind of go on about it, but he plays football like he's playing on the school playground, and I think that's what I love. And long may it continue, and long may it never be tainted by Premier League football and the nonsense that is kind of modern day football. Keep playing how he's playing, because he's just so exciting to watch, and ultimately that's what we want. We want excitement. But that's kind of three things I would say about those three players specifically. But yeah, they were enjoyable to watch. Football at the moment at Huddersfield Town is enjoyable to watch, from purest point, the tactic point, which is the actual football itself. It is entertaining, and that's something you probably can't say for a number of years, even with success. It's not always been entertaining, but I'd argue, again, biased, that it is now. Town are a good team to watch. It's probably why I keep getting our games moved by Sky Sports.
Bastards. But yeah, go on, Darg. I'll let you bookend that.
Well, I can't really add much to that. But one thing I will say is, and I was told not long ago that in his first season, Danny Ward was really affected quite negatively about how things had gone for him in his first season back. The stick he was getting and his injuries. So for him to be the player that he's been this season, and I think he's a good example of how the whole team has grown. Because if you think about, let's be honest, some of the earlier performances this season, if you take the Reading home game out, some of those games weren't that great. I think the Preston game at home, which was absolutely dreadful. It was the greatest, best player in the world. But you think about how he's grown, and he personifies that. And what John said about him is absolutely true. And well, put it another way: if O'Brien and Ward played on Monday night, who wins that game? And I'm not saying it was the wrong decision to rest them, and O'Brien had a knock against Peterborough, but it just shows how important those are. And look, I mean, you can't speak highly enough about Lewis O'Brien. I mean, he plays so many minutes. He's the heartbeat of the team. So, when we're having a difficult spell in a game, he'll make a tackle, he'll make an interception, he'll carry the ball forward 10 yards, and he'll get us moving forward. He'll make a pass. You can't see how we're able to keep him unless we do manage to get to the Premier League, which is a long way off yet. But I wouldn't begrudge him, because the fact that he was prepared to stay when he could have dug his heels in back in the transfer window and said, no, I'm going to go for the Premiership money, and maybe sit on a bench somewhere, which would have been awful, says a lot about him, and he deserves it all. And Sorba Thomas, he's just the personality of the team, isn't he? He's not the same personality, but he is the Michael Heffley of this team. Totally different characters, but he's the one that we all identify with. He's the one who Pozza and co all have the relationship with in the South Stand. And he's so natural, and he seems such a great bloke, and you just want it to continue for him. And you want him to have when he moves on, and he will move on at some point, you just know he'll have a connection with us. He's that sort of guy, I think, and he won't forget what Huddersfield Town has done for him, and we won't forget what he's done for Huddersfield Town. And I think there's more to come, because I think this team, I'll tell you when it was, the Sheffield United game, which isn't that long ago, was the first time I'd sat for 90 minutes and thought, this is a good team now. This is a good team. We only drew the game 0-0, but I thought this is progressing, and I still think they're progressing, and that's what's exciting, because we are going to lose a game in these next 9 games. We're probably going to lose 2, maybe 3.
Don't say that.
But you still think there's a real opportunity here now.
Yeah, 100%.
We may win all 9.
Go up second, I think, if we win all 9.
It's not impossible. I mean, it's not likely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not completely impossible, but it's equally possible they might. They could lose. I mean, Millwall's a difficult game, isn't it? It's always a difficult game. And the fact that they believe in each other, and they're playing for the manager, and that's transcending into the stand, which, after the 3 years we've had since we got relegated, it's just such a joy to actually see the club progressing on the pitch. It's, you can't say any more than that.
Here. Right, guys, I'm going to move from you two guys in this box to the box in the chat box. So sorry, guys, I haven't really come to you in the chat much tonight, as much as usual. So a couple of polls I put in here. So the first poll was VAR in the Championship, yes or no. What about you guys? Jonny, yes or no, VAR Championship?
If you'd asked me before last night, I probably said no. I'm not a massive fan of VAR.
No,
so I won't. I'll give myself another 48 hours to calm down before I change my mind. So I'll still say no.
I'm going to say no. Darg, you reckon yes or no?
I'd say no. I think the whole system's wrong, but I'm going to start that debate because
start another episode. Won't we?
But no, as it stands at the moment, no.
Well, we are in the popularity of the percentages. VAR in the Championship, yes, 41%, no, 48%. And this last poll here, Jonny, is... Oh, hang on, where's it gone? We'll have to come back to that one. So I'll come to the notes. I've just ended the poll and it's disappeared, but it'll reappear at some point. Right, so JF said it's Prince who sung Nothing Compares to You, and I quickly Googled that. And do you know what? He's right. It was Prince, and Sinead O'Connor covered it in 1989. I'm not au fait with Prince, but I do know our former podder and purveyor of Whopper of the Week, Neil Wayne, is a massive Prince fan, so he'll probably scold me for that next time he sees me, if he listens to this episode. Jerry Hinnon says, he's not too upset. If Town continue playing the way they have played last night, they won't miss the points they dropped. The referee stole, he hopes. JF says, so much to love about last night. The fact that we almost bounced back for a 3-2 as well shows how far we've come. Mark2807 says, after we scored, I thought we were bloody excellent. controlled the game perfectly. Then late on, we changed shape perhaps to counter Andy Carroll, and boom, it was 2-2 before we knew it. Jay says, shame about the second goal. It was one of the few times we switched off Hogg's pass and then no one tracking Andy Carroll. That is true. He does run unchallenged, doesn't he, from the edge of the box, which is a little bit disappointing, but que sera. Eddie Martin says that was the perfect away performance for 80 minutes. Given the results today, it might not look like the worst point come the end of the season, and we can take a lot from that performance going forward. Yeah, I've put something here as well, which I missed earlier on. I've put that in terms of the top 6, I think it's a good point, but in terms of the top 2, it's a bad point. I think that's pretty much sums up what I feel about the result, but it's not about me. It's about these guys. Mark says, Mark 2807 says, awful penalty, but as Hef said on Sky, you have to get past that and really concentrate, and we switched off, allowing the big man to get the header in. Gutted. It felt like a defeat. But given we were so gutted at the draw away at West Brom, it shows how far we've come this season, and that is a really good point, isn't it? That West Brom, we've taken 4 points off West Brom, and West Brom, I think a lot of people predicted would finish in the top 2 this year, and even though they're around 12th, 13th at the minute, they've still got a hell of a side, haven't they, when you look through it. Adam Cottrell, I almost thought I said Cattrall then. Cottrell says, nearly a textbook away performance yesterday until the ref and Hogg dropped massive clangers at the end. Ward looks the fittest he's ever been. Unbelievable work rate. Paul Hitchinson says, I think Millwall will get sobered on Wednesday night. Hope Town put them to the sword to keep pressure on Bournemouth. Feed the Ward, he will score. Work rate is off the scale at the moment from the team. Up the Town. Jerry's back. He says, all players cheat in one way or another, but I don't think every player would not get touched and throw himself to the ground holding his head. Mowat sucks. Jerry's American, so he's allowed to say that. Matt Orton says, poor decisions are made by officials week in, week out, and up and down the land, up and down the leagues. Some sort of transparency as to why decisions are made is needed. So I think Matt's on your side there, Jonny. Richard Crowther says, aren't players supposed to be given retrospective punishment when found to be conning a ref for a penalty? If not, they should be. I did think that yesterday. I wonder what has happened to that, because I haven't seen anybody, since VAR really, I haven't seen anybody retrospectively punished. And I do remember an incident away at Bristol Rovers in 2009, I think it was, where Gary Roberts was sent off away at, I think we lost to Bristol Rovers. I think they scored a penalty. Jeff Hughes, I think, scored it. I don't know why my memory's so good on nonsense like that, and it's really bad about what happened yesterday, but, you know. I think it was Hughes who scored the penalty, and Gary Roberts was sent off on re-review of something that happened in the penalty box during the skirmish, and they used the TV angle that everyone else could see, and absolutely nothing happened, so I've got no idea. I'm still bitter about that 13 years later. Amazing. Didn't realise I was. Who else have we got? Paul Hitchinson says, Hef's a legend, does not hold back and expresses how he feels. And Adam Cottrell says, hope Hef is in the Sky studio again on Wednesday. Hef's always on Sky, isn't he? He's absolutely top class. Every time we play, Hef's there. Mark says, the only way VAR should be used is if a monitor at the side of the pitch where the ref could take a look, and for offsides. If it's not clear and obvious with the naked eye, then benefit should go to the forward. And then Adam Cottrell says, just imagine if Grant scored instead of hitting the bar, he was miles offside. It was quite close, I think, when they put it together. But again, I've got no idea what the rules are these days, especially at Championship. But Adam Cottrell, Hogg should have just cleared his lines, relieved the pressure. It was daft for such an experienced player. The lads will on Wednesday. Just a couple left now. Richard Crowther says, a big positive that our quick breaking attacks are getting better as the season progresses, and we are looking very accomplished at it now. And Paul Hitchinson says, I've ate my words start of the season. I was a big critic of Danny Ward. I've eaten humble pie. Danny Ward is our most consistent performer, and Sorba is immense this season. And then he says Sorba nutmegged Kyle Bartley about 3 times as well. He absolutely had him on toast, didn't he? And then JF, I think he's making a good point here, which is about Carlos. He says, love that Carlos says, I'm not the manager of the month, I'm the manager of the team of the month. That just shows the team and Terriers spirit. And I think Carlos comes out of, every time he speaks, I know a lot of people are critical that they can't quite 100% tell what Carlos is saying, and he does have a thick Spanish accent, and, you know, his English is his second language, etc., etc., etc. These are facts, not made up. But he's the more you listen to him, the easier it becomes, you know. And I think what's really good about Carlos is he always handles himself. I've got a picture on my phone that I took because I was laughing because he looks so furious, and I thought, finally, Carlos is going to tear strips off someone in an interview. And he didn't. He was, as always, Carlos was incredibly dignified in the responses he gave. He went, yes, it was a penalty, but we've got to respond better, etc., etc. And he always gives a really good, honest response, and he never goes to town on a referee, never makes excuses, and he always, the buck always stops with him. I think there's a lot a lot of credit with Carlos, and he's always done this. It's not something that he's done because we're winning. He did it last year as well when we were losing, and I think Carlos carries himself very well. And I'm actually very pleased that Carlos is. Maybe I wouldn't have said this 12 months ago, but I'm very pleased that Carlos is the manager of Huddersfield Town, because not only because we're doing well on the pitch, but off the pitch, Carlos, I think, carries himself incredibly well, and I think he suits the football club with, his personality as well. So a good point that Jay's made about Carlos and his manager of the month. And I did a final poll, and the final poll was, does Jonny have a look of Christopher Schindler? And it was 50% say yes, the handsome bugger, and 50% says nah, not at all. So the jury's still out on that one, Jonny. So there we go. From a slight angle, I think with a squint, maybe there's a look there.
I'll happily take 50%.
There you go. But that's it from the guys in the chat box. Thank you very much for tuning in and joining us. If you guys could click on the like button and share it and things like that, that really helps put the podcast under more people's eyes. It's not an ego thing. It just pops up on more searches, that's all, and pops up on as suggested things for people to watch. It just puts it in front of town fans' eyes, that's all. Right, I think the last points we've really got to make, really. I've got a bit about Carlos and his dignity, comparing that to Steve Bruce, who sort of sat there and barefacedly said that West Bromwich Albion should have nicked the game. I was just like, you cheeky bastard. If I'd have had a cabbage, I'd have thrown it at him. But, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But Darg, season cards. Maybe this could be something for ATT moving forward altogether town. I think there's a meeting there quite soon, but usually they're on sale about now, aren't they? And I think that links nicely. I think there are a lot of there's a lot of Twitter accounts, take pictures of away fans, post them, and then people just say, what a load of tin pot shit, and it's what these accounts do. And they were doing that about the Huddersfield support at West Brom, which, everybody that went to West Brom has got, my 100% respect. They made more noise than the West Brom fans, for over the course of the 90 minutes. They were superb. And, okay, maybe there wasn't 10,000 of us there. I didn't go because work-wise and Sky have moved it. And I think this links, the season cards going on sale. I think some of the home attendances probably deserved more than what we've got. I know people went to the Cardiff and Swansea ones when it was a bit cheaper, etc. But I do think that we perhaps need to sort of have a think maybe about how we can get some lapsed fans back in the ground as well, because I know price isn't always the motivating factor, is it, for a lot of people? I think Dean Hoyle coming back has had a positive effect for some people as well. Maybe some people, maybe not so much, but I think largely that's had a positive effect on those that didn't like Phil Hodgkinson and are starting to slowly return. But I think they need to get these season cards right as well, Dag, because I don't think any mass increases or anything, but I think Town have got a really good opportunity here to get everybody back in that was perhaps there in 2019, where we had around 18,000 season ticket holders. And because Town economically need to have a home crowd of 20,000, really need an energised home fan base of around 20,000. The output in terms of commercials will go up, and that all then puts the club in a really strong position to sort of have a tilt at a top 6, a top 10 year on year in the Championship, rather than a 12,000 home crowd barely paying or barely buying shirts, etc. But I think it's quite key how they play this, and it'll be interesting to see how Dean does it.
I was just a bit puzzled because in the previous 3, 4, 5 years we've known how much they would be, and you were able to buy them around this time of year, weren't you? And if you wanted to renew, you were encouraging people to actually do it as early as possible. I don't think there's anything sinister in that, but I think you're right. And it's interesting what Dean's trying to do with, so for example, the Bournemouth tickets next week are a tenner for people who aren't season card holders. And I think that's a good thing. And I hope, I've said we could win the next 9 games. I was being a bit facetious, but if we lost against Millwall, it'd be amazing how many people who think, I'm not going to spend a tenner going watch Town, they're about to blow it again, because that's the mentality of Town fans. I'm one myself, so I know exactly what that means. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how things develop at the club going forward. I don't think we can recreate exactly what we had 16, 17 and the work that Sean Jarvis and Dean and David Wagner pulled together. But I think there is an opportunity here to make the club better. And without getting too morose about things, there's lots of things going on in the world at the moment. And the cost of things is going to make a difference to some people, and it's got to be priced correctly. It's got to be also attractive in terms of what they expect on the pitch. But I think there is an opportunity, whereas with overspending, some clubs are still struggling after COVID. I don't know what our position is, and Dean Hall would have to tell us at some point. I'm sure he will at the appropriate time. And I don't think that time is this moment, because I think we need to focus on these next 9 games now because of the opportunity we've got. But the opportunity is there for the club to re-engage with some of those lost fans, to get them in and say, we've got a sustainable model here, which will mean that year on year we'll look to steadily improve and provide you with good football at hopefully a competitive price. And as you say, Matt, getting those season ticket holders we had in the 16-17 season with the deal that we had then, that sort of propelled us to the next level. And that made a difference in those games we needed to win at the business end of the season. You know, the Preston game, you know, you think of that game, the playoff game, you know, I know we didn't win that afternoon, but that is all about building for the future. So I'm a bit surprised we haven't heard about the season tickets. There's probably a very good reason, but it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I think, I don't know, but I guess you're right in saying there's a lot of things going on outside of football. There's also, it's probably been the most turmoil behind the scenes, non-football in Huddersfield Town for a number of years. Even when it transitioned from Hoyle to Hodgkinson, it was very planned, it was very structured. We knew what was happening early doors. I know there's been the issue with the Southport, etc., but it was delayed a little bit. But we knew, I think for a long time, probably since administration, that we've had a little bit of unexpected change behind the scenes. So that will probably be sorted now, given where we are. If we've had a bit of a release of information normally comes quite a few weeks after the actual fact. It might have been a little bit they're looking to structure it right, like you both alluded to, probably a little bit behind. We need to work out who's where, what's what before we do that. I think you're right. I think with everything on the pitch and the ethos of the players and what the players have done and how the players and Carlos have tried to create a new environment around the club, off the pitch, they can really capitalise that. It's a shame they've kind of already had a new beginning. I think that was a 1994-5 season. Neil Warnock was a new beginning. I think that was that one. But it kind of is a little bit like that, isn't it? But yeah, marketing it right, pricing it right, using the success of whatever happens this season. They deserve real credit. The club deserves real credit for what's happened, how they've had to change things around. And I think there's a real opportunity to kind of get people back or get new people in. And like you say, these opportunities do need to be taken, because it makes a real difference to a club at our level. How many people in the ground? Certainly whilst we play in the Championship, the club that have done well. When we've got the fans, we've always used the fans. The fans always help the club on the pitch. So it is important. So maybe it's just a bit of time. Maybe it's a bit of messiness. Do you know what I mean? Behind the scenes in the boardroom, it's slightly delayed that. But like I said, I don't think it's anything kind of sinister or unnecessary to worry about. It might be the fact we'll see it in a couple of weeks, but as long as I don't lose my seat, that's all I'm bothered about.
So you're definitely renewing then. That's a good point.
I don't think there's anything sinister in it. I think there are a lot of things that need to be sorted out, and I think that those are discussions. You know, I'd have questions based on what's gone on in the past and what we've learned from the past, but that doesn't matter for the moment, because what matters is what happens in these next 9 games and beyond that. And I think that's what we need to focus on. But going forward, you know, say we weren't successful in getting promotion this season, which, you know, is perfectly possible. You know, we're not nailed on to be promoted by any stretch. And we lose a Lewis O'Brien and we lose a Sorba Thomas, because they are good players and they're still going to attract Premiership clubs and they're going to attract good fees because they are good players. So you need to have some confidence that we're able to identify replacements and recruit replacements. Now, after this time last year, I'd have come on here and said the recruitment team haven't got a clue what they're doing. I'm facing them. I was clearly wrong because of the job that they've done this year. So the succession planning that they have and how that will work, because I'm sure that Dean will come on and tell us at some point, we're still a selling club. Every club is a selling club to a degree, but we will be doing the same model, I think, that Phil introduced, which is to bring young players through, get people out of academies who have been rejected, make the most of those, get good value additions in, develop them and sell them on. That will be our model, but actually get benefit from them while they're with us. As long as we can see that that's what it is, and we can see evidence of players being recruited of that nature, I don't think people have a problem with that. And I don't think, given the economic climate that we have in the world at the moment, I don't think you're going to get loads of billionaires throwing money at football clubs in the short term. So that model, to me, is what we need to do. It's just a question where we've got a stolen a march with what's happened this year is people now believe that what Lee Bromby and the team do works. What Dean did in actually changing the academy works. What Carlos is doing in terms of his team ethos and the way the team play works. So that's three things all in tandem that are really working well. And you can see the evidence of that. Provided we can build on that structure and keep it working, and don't throw millions at it. Don't be buying the Mbenders and the Diakabis anymore. Let's use that structure and see where that takes us. But I think that's what I'd be doing if I was selling it, and at a decent price. And, let's be honest, win the next 3 games, you could put the season tickets out for sale in the international break and people would probably buy them in like hotcakes, wouldn't they? Lose the next 3 games and a difficult sell. That's just a fact of life, isn't it?
100%. I think that's probably a good place to end, but what we'll do is we'll go through some of the comments because a few more have come in about the season card stuff. Adam Cottrell says schools promotions in the FM lower hasn't really happened this season ? And I think part of that is because they struggled for a safety certificate for the FM lower for quite a while. I'm not 100% sure why, but I do know there was some sort of COVID regulation involved at some point, and that is, I think, where they do the jabs as well, and there are all sorts going on there. But they did manage to get it for the Cardiff game, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they could bring that back. And I think you've always got to look at the future, haven't you? Because adults get bored. We know people online, and in person that have kind of just fall out with it, don't they? And it happens. Everyone falls out with it at some point. They come back at some point, or they might not. But you've constantly got to look to churn in, and get the new ones through, especially the kids in the local area. From there. So, that's going to be interesting moving forward. Adam also says Dean is good at getting fans in, get him on the pod. If Dean ever wants to come on this pod, he is more than welcome to do so. And, we can obviously host a Q&A for him via here as well, if he would ever want to do that, and take questions from social media. But, that's up to Dean. Jay says, more and more are coming back. I think it's an easier sell to mates now we're winning. I'm bringing 2 versus Luton, so good on you. I think that's something that town fans need to try and do as well, to try and boost the numbers. Do you remember we used to have season cards? I think it might have even been Ken Davey, and there was a friend for a £5 voucher in there and things like that, weren't they? They were quite good back in the day. And people would always scramble around for them, weren't they? Has anyone got a friend for a £5? Bloody paying, you tight bastard. Used to get quite a lot of that back in the day. But yeah, I think, it's not always just on the club to get people in. I bring a mate. I've got a mate who's from Poland, who's now adopted Huddersfield as his number 1 English team, because I've managed to drag him down to a couple of games, here and there. So, Jay says it might be good to make the walk down the Kilner Bank easier and safer. Someone's going to get run over one night. I don't walk down that way, so I just went on Twitter to share the link, and I found this from a West Brom fan, and it doesn't work, Jay, but never mind. Here we go. Adam says we'll sell out most games next season in the Premier League, which I'm sure they will. And the West Brom fan says, sure how poor the league is, that Huddersfield are where they are in the league. Such an average team of no-name players who just seem to run around a lot. Well, I think that says more about the West Brom fan than what it does about everyone else. And this is the thing. I think we talk about football snobbery and everything, and everybody's just a sort of a sheep to the Premier League wagon out there these days. If you don't know who some of these Huddersfield Town players are, then that says more about you than what it does about the Huddersfield Town, so never mind. And Jay, he's obviously not overly enthused by that. And then the last few comments, Mark says, lockdown and empty stadiums had a lot to do with this. Phil didn't really do the promotions like Dean does, which was a shame. Probably lost quite a few fans over the last couple of years. I think we probably have, but I think that's probably more to the results as much as anything as well. And it's a tough watch, wasn't it, last year with Carlos and Cowley? I think there's elements of that. And I think one thing as well is we thought when we got relegated from the Premier League, we would come down and our standing in the Premier League would move up a notch and we would be able to throw a lot more punches than what we were doing when we came down. I think that first game against Derby where we got beat by Derby and deservedly so, I think everybody was like, oh, we're back to being crap again in the Championship. And I think that affected people as much as everything as well. And then Adam says, we are the piss boiling champions. I think that happens whether we go up or not, doesn't it? And then Bez says, hope Dean will honour the price freeze Phil promised to people who renewed in lockdown. But that's it, I think, for tonight. Any last words from you guys?
Don't think so, Matt. Thank you.
No, good stuff. Excellent debut, Darg. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you back sometime as well in the future. Keep ringing Radio Leeds as well if you can get on the line for Cozzy. Good to see you again, Jonny, as well, and good to see.
I'll try and stop that Cozy getting on.
I know.
So get him off here. We've had enough.
You'll never get Cozzy off. Cozzy's in Spain at the minute. No. He's not on the pod this week because he got to go watch Atletico Madrid. So he's in sunny climes, happy as Larry at the minute. He'll probably listen to this later in the week. So we'll send our love to the Cosmeister. And thanks as well, Jonny, for coming on. We'll definitely see you again soon. And thanks to everybody online. Like I say, just help us out by liking it and sharing it, and that means a lot to us. And let's roll in a little bit of Chris Carter.